Oh, hey, Wilson, it's saying that screen sharing is disabled.
Oh, huh. Let me see about that. 1 second.
Yeah, all good.
How to. Uh, okay, there we go. Try it now.
All right. Yeah, we're good now. Thank you.
Perfect. Yes, sir.
All right, let's see here. All right. You guys see my slides?
Yes, sir.
All right, cool. Let's get into it. So, yeah, no, happy to meet with y'all. As most noted, my name is Shaun Sousa. I am the Director of Data and Technology Strategy over here at the Chicago Bulls. Before I got into things, I'd really just want to thank the ASAA for reaching out. It's an exciting opportunity to present to you all today. Wish they had something like this when I was doing my undergrad. I think it'd be really exciting to hear where various folks from the Georgia Tech Network went with their careers. So, hopefully, over the next 20 or 30 minutes, I can give you guys some good feedback on where I went with my career after I did my undergrad and later graduate degree from Georgia Tech. And hopefully, that guides some of y'all through your career as you go forward. All right, so I'll go ahead and start and give some more background about me and why I went to Georgia Tech. I would say at a very young age, personally, I've always been in love with technology. It's kind of funny going through these slides. It caused me to reflect back, and I think even back in middle school, I remember I had a keyboarding class that I took, and the teacher had a programming book, and I couldn't wait to finish my assignments early just so I could get into that book and start teaching myself programming. So if there's one thing I was sure of is that I always had a passion for technology, and I looked forward to leveraging that in my career. Another big reason, obviously, going to Georgia Tech, aside from my passion for technology, is being an Atlanta native. Certainly, you guys know for the folks that are coming from the Atlanta area, having the Hope Scholarship is a great motivating factor for staying in state. But that, coupled with the fact that really Georgia Tech represented to me being the best of the best, knowing my passion for software, wanted to focus on something either computer science or computer engineering. It really made it a no-brainer for me. So I was incredibly fortunate to be right there in Atlanta, very close to Georgia Tech. But I think even if I was living out of state, Georgia Tech probably was where my future was. So very happy with that decision to go forward with that, and it's helped me a lot in my career. Um, Getting into some of the stuff I did as an undergrad at Georgia Tech that I thought it was important for this conversation that I wanted to bring up are probably the things that are outside from your normal curriculum pieces. One I'd mention Greek life. I thought being involved in a fraternity helped a lot, just as far as establishing those lifelong relationships as well as early leadership development. During my time at Tech, I was part of Tau Kappa Epsilon fraternity and did a lot of leadership positions while I was part of the fraternity. That included being the technology chair. Probably no surprise there weren't too many computer science majors as part of the fraternity, so I basically held that position life or through my entire undergrad time. But also did kitchen steward. That was good exposure towards managing the books as well as people management, managing the cook that we had on staff, and then eventually being a vice president. So that leadership experience, I think, helped a lot during my undergrad. Other pieces I point towards, I can't speak highly enough of the co-op program at Georgia Tech. I did the co-op program while I was there. I worked for a company called the Institute of Nuclear Power Operations, which is about 15 minutes outside of Atlanta. I worked mainly with data right there, and I think it was a great experience in the fact not only to get that relevant work experience to be able to know that I had some meat to my resume before I graduated, but it specifically gave me a direction in where I wanted to go with my career. That's where I really think I would point towards where my passion for focusing specifically on data was born. I worked a lot in building out data pipelines, data transformations in that role, and that really guided me through my career. Other parts I'd point towards from my undergrad experience, I can't speak highly enough of the study abroad program. I would highly encourage anyone who has the opportunity to do so to take a semester abroad. My time when I did that was during the spring semester where they offered at the time, which was Australia, New Zealand, Japan, and Hong Kong. And just having those exposure to other cultures, kind of opening up the world to me, went a long way, I would say. I put down this cliche at the bottom of the slide, but I really do think the biggest lessons you can have are outside the classroom. So I'm very thankful that Georgia Tech was able to facilitate that. Some other things aside from my computer science degree that I got involved with that I think are important to call out, and I would encourage others to get involved with is one, I did my IT management certificate. I would encourage folks to do a certificate or minor to complement their degree if they can, just for the kind of broadening of your horizons. Who knows, it may lead you in a direction where you may change your or shift your direction in your career, or it may be just a great complement for a major you're committed to. Either way, I think it's good to be more versatile. And finally, having the ability, specifically with computer science, to have a specialization when you did. As I mentioned, when I went through the co-op program, the ability to have a data management specialization went a long way towards making sure I was well prepared for the real world. Knowing the areas I wanted to work into, and just strengthen the passion I had that much more about what I wanted to do. So I was very fortunate that I was able to focus my time in a very specific area of computer science that I enjoy. All right, so after I finished my undergrad, I spent quite a few years before I went back to Sheller's Business School to do my MBA. So I just wanted to call out some of the things I did in my career here real quick, because I think those steps were really important in what led me to the Bulls today.
Hey, Shaun, real
One,
quick.
yeah,
This might just be on my end, but I'm still just seeing your first intro slide on my side. Is that true for everybody else, or is that just oh, there we go. Now it's changing.
are you seeing?
Yes, sir.
Oh, let me see here. That's interesting. All right, let me see here. I'm glad you spoke up. Yeah, because I'm already on like slide 3.
Yeah.
All right, cool. I'll just present here like this.
Cool.
All right. So, yeah, I was talking. So after I finished my undergrad time at Georgia Tech, I did have quite a few years before I went back to Sheller's Business School to do my MBA. So just wanted to call out a couple of things that I did. Most of my employment was at a company called Route Match Software, which was in Midtown Atlanta. It's really where I gained the experience of understanding what it took to develop sustainable software, enterprise software development. Also technical leadership, just based on how I was able to have the growth during that time. I went from being a software engineer to a senior software engineer to a director from there. So had a lot of opportunity there, but also knew that there was a lot more where I wanted to go with my career as I grew further and further on. Yes, I was, grew to being a leader specifically in software, but I knew there was a lot in terms of where I wanted to hone my professional ability, my leadership ability, and really just broadening my horizons, growing more of my business acumen, I would say. Something wherein you're kind of living in this sort of vacuum of just software development, you don't really get the full exposure to. But I was fortunate to move into a more product management and ownership role near the end of my time at Route Match, which was good because it gave me exposure to being a leader across folks that were across different disciplines. So it wasn't just managing software engineers at that point or software architects. I was managing the QA team. It was managing documentation writers. It was managing people that were doing report development, other product managers. So a variety of folks that all came together to develop a software product. So I was very fortunate to have that exposure with that company. So why did I go back to Georgia Tech again? I mentioned it a little bit in the previous slide there, but I really knew that I needed to have a better understanding of the full spectrum of the business. Again, can't speak highly enough of the things I learned while doing my computer science degree at Georgia Tech. But one thing that is missing from that degree is that you're not going to get the classes like economics, finance, marketing, for example. These are like classes that I think, particularly for people that go to like liberal arts schools or other majors, get that some level of exposure to. But I had no exposure to it, so I knew that was a gap in my professional toolkit, so to speak. So very fortunate to be able to go to Georgia Tech again to get my MBA. really kind of broadened my horizon. It gave me the understanding the full spectrum of the business, as I like to say, and I really understand what it takes to make a business operate. Besides that, though, Georgia Tech does a great job of helping you grow your skills as a leader. There are specific classes I took in leadership, specifically leadership in teams. There's times where I go back and review some of the Harvard business articles I had from that class because I thought they were such great learnings. As well as just being comfortable, honestly, doing presentations like this. Almost every class I took had a component where you were presenting in front of the entire class, so you had to be comfortable with public speaking. So I'm very fortunate to get that exposure because I think that is a small or a large part of being a leader is being comfortable speaking in front of a group. Lastly, I'll just kind of say on this part, I know is one point I'm going to talk about later in the slides is not being afraid of taking risk and betting on yourself. I think this was a perfect example. I was definitely hesitant to jumping in and doing my MBA. It was going to be difficult to be balancing that with a full-time job. Certainly fortunate that Georgia Tech offers an evening MBA. But yeah, I was not sure how I was going to balance that, but glad I did. I did want to take a picture of this. The folks over at the Scheller Business School were kind enough when I graduated to provide this, as well as the other folks who graduated with a 4.0. So between me and everybody on the call, I like to say this was my personal revenge against Georgia Tech to be able to come back and get a 4.0. All right. So the last part is just kind of going in before I get into my career here at the Bulls is just talk about some of the other things I think were important stepping stones towards what led me here. After I finished up my MBA, again, another thing I want to lean on quite a bit is about how relationships matter. My next role that I got out of my MBA is primarily because of relationships I established during my MBA. Particularly, I like to point towards a class I took while I was doing getting that degree, and that was someone named Bob Cross. He presents it in the pricing analytics class just about every semester, and that's how I found about his firm, Revenue Analytics. That allowed me to pivot towards having, working in analytics as my career, working as a data engineering architect lead as part of that group. And that's where I really got to leverage my understanding of being in the full spectrum of the business, where not just leading a development team, but being involved in sales cycles, being in front of the client, having that exposure, but then also overseeing the execution of the projects we had. But got some great exposure as far as what it took to develop pipelines from scratch on AWS, leading in some incredibly brilliant people, and doing projects that had a big global impacts to some of the biggest brands out there. I always tell people one of the things I did was a global pricing project with Hyatt. So, whatever you happen to pay for a hotel room, or if you happen to have a family member that had a wedding at a Hyatt hotel, hate to break it to you, I'm the jerk who decided what you paid for that. Finally, the last company I spent my career at before moving over to the Chicago Bulls was actually a small SaaS company called ShootProof. This was really important towards my development and being an analytics leader, as I got to start an analytics and data engineering department from scratch. It was started as a small SaaS firm, grew to a multi-brand conglomerate during my time there, moving to 5 brands under the ShootProof family, and was able to build out the data enablement across all those brands. So a great opportunity in taking a small data team, developing a full stack from scratch. And that's what really helped me stand out as I transitioned to this role with the Bulls. Okay, so why the Chicago Bulls? I think one thing I probably haven't talked about much up to this point is what led me here. Why did I decide to pivot my career here? Um, Honestly, I've always been passionate about sports. I listen to the Business of Sports podcast. I always find the whole concept of the business around professional sports to be very interesting, and it was always a personal dream of mine. I always thought if I could take what I do as an architect or an analytics leader, and I could apply that to an industry I could be passionate about, then as a cliche goes, I I wouldn't work a day in my life because I loved what I was doing every day. And so that was my main driver here. I'd always aspired to somehow take what I did in analytics and be able to apply it to professional sports. And as I said before, the relationships I established earlier in my career and my time in school um, are a big reason why I got this role. I personally searched out this post. If you guys can see it on LinkedIn, I know the screen is a little small here, so I apologize. But if it weren't for this LinkedIn post here, I would not be working at the Bulls today. So just to you know further emphasize how relationships matter. This person actually, Nadine, was uh, uh, a former co-worker of my wife's. Actually, had worked. They had worked together at Accenture. She had spent some time at the Bulls, but had since left. But because she shared this, my wife stumbled upon the role. She saw the job description, thought it was a perfect fit for me. She knew what I wanted to do. Wasn't so excited about moving to Chicago just because we had spent so much time in Atlanta, and I admit the weather takes a little bit to get used to, but knew it was something you couldn't pass up. So I was very fortunate to first talk to Nadine about the role and talk to her about the Bulls, but allow that to get my foot in the door. But at the end of the day, from what I heard, I was one of 600 people who applied for this role, and I was able to make it happen. So very fortunate to now be part of the Bulls family, all because of this one post right here. So let me tell you about what it feels like to be working as Director of Data and Technology Strategy here at the Chicago Bulls. One, I'll say the most difficult part of this job was getting used to wearing red and black here. As you guys know, all as being members of the Georgia Tech family, red and black kind of burns just to look at. So that took some adapting. Um, but it's fun. I will say, full disclosure, I work overseeing the business analytics of the Chicago Bulls. So as much as I love to be involved on the money ball side of things and the player analytics, and be the guy in the room who says, "Hey, guess what? LeBron is a great basketball player." No, I'm more so the guy who decides what you pay for tickets, or if you get automated marketing emails, all the data enablement that comes from that. But it's an exciting place to be. Our office is attached right here to the United Center. So I took a picture. The basketball court here is probably about less than 100 feet from where I'm standing right now. Uh, Took a picture of the nameplate. I was excited when I saw that the first day I came in, and yeah, right downstairs we got the six championship trophies on display there. So that's a picture of me and my wife when I showed her the arena when I first started. So it's we are right here where the magic happens, which is really fun. One thing I'll also mention, we share the United Center with the Blackhawks, so they're just one floor above us, which is really nice because one thing that's afforded to us by working on the business side as opposed to the player side is that networking is amazing. I keep on going back to relationships, but folks that work on the business analytics side of major sports teams are really big into networking. I've met so many of my counterparts that work at the Blackhawks, as I mentioned. I meet with them actually once a month. In just a year and a half that I've been with the Bulls, I've met with folks that work for the Seahawks, the Magic, the Timberwolves, the Pacers, the Chicago Fire. I mean, the list goes on and on across almost every major league. Just because everyone is so big on networking, sharing their experiences, what technologies they're using, where they're going. So it's helped me a lot in expediting my knowledge, the domain knowledge about working in sports and applying what I've learned in technology up to this point. All right, some things I'll call out about my role about the being a director of data and technology strategy. Well, quick side note. So I did take a picture right here. This is actually one of the hallways we have here in the front office. I personally love this. It was the first thing that stood out to me when I did an interview here. But it's a half court on each side. But if you can make out the picture, there's 92, 93, 94 on one side, 96, 97, 98 on the other, and that represents the six titles that the Bulls won in the 90s. So it's just an interesting art piece that we have here in the office. But getting back to my role, I think first and foremost is about data enablement. It's you may be surprised to hear, but with a multi-billion-dollar team such as the Bulls, you would think there's tons of people on staff here, but really the front office is comprised of only maybe 150 folks, give or take. And so, data enablement and how we power sales, marketing, corporate partnerships, the digital products teams, all those departments to make strong data-driven decisions is a lot to take on for a very small team. I would say the entire business strategy and analytics group is only about a dozen people right now. So we are trying to do the most with the least. Some of the questions that we answer this group that I support is, as I mentioned, if you went out to the Bulls Pelicans game on Wednesday, I'm the one who decided you paid for those tickets. When we do corporate partnerships, for example, we have Motorola who has their badge on our jerseys. How we price that corporate partnership deal with them for a multi-year deal is based on the analytics our group does. Um, as we decide to do marketing automations, if we're going to target a very specific set of folks to come out to a game, maybe when the Pacers are in town in January, who are going to be those top 100, 1,000, 5,000 people we target is going to be driven based on all the data that we have on our fans that comes from the data platform that we develop. So interesting it's very interesting, I'd say, in how we're able to leverage the data we collect from all the different disparate sources we collect from. Also, my role is the technical roadmap. So as I mentioned, the data enablement only comes from the tools that we have available to us. And so I got to make sure the technology can facilitate the problems that we're trying to solve. One thing I'll share on the next slide here, but a big part of this has been taking ownership of a data platform where we're managing this now entirely in-house. A couple of things that are just general themes I'd say that are part of my role is first and foremost, automate everything. As I mentioned, we're actually a very small group, the entire front office being only about 150 folks. So anything that I can do to take something that is a human intensive process and use the power of technology to automate around that, and that's something that we're gonna do, because that's gonna have huge benefits down the road, because that frees that person up to focus on bigger and better things. And then, again, a bit of a cliche, but I like to say it. My job is just to make the impossible a reality and make the possible easy. The fact of the matter is, this is a basketball front office. There aren't a ton of folks that I would say are technology experts here, so it's my job to be that person. And so it's up to me to open their eyes and let them know what is actually possible. It's honestly, one of the most exciting things I have almost on a day-to-day basis is when I meet with our CFO, I meet with our chief operating officer, and hearing the various problems that we're dealing with. And I tell them on how either the data we have or the technology we have, how we can help solve that problem or make that problem easier. Just the wide eyes I still see on a daily basis, brings so much excitement to me and just makes it all worth it. So it's really exciting to get to be that person here. All right. Again, probably something that would probably resonate a little bit more if I had a bigger way to display this, but I did want to point out a big part of my role here and what we've done in the first year and a half is building out a world-class data platform that's managed in-house. And I say that because I think it'd be surprising for a lot of folks to know, not unique to the Bulls, but this is something that's across all teams and all sports, is that very few of them have full ownership of their data platform being done in the front office. Certainly, all of them are very well enabled in how they apply analytics, but having that ownership over the technology platform is not something a lot of them do. There are a lot of companies out there that have made a business in focusing in sports specifically to serve those teams. But more and more, knowing the proliferation of tools that have happened here, I would say specifically since 2020 onward, cloud data warehouses like Snowflake, data pipeline tools like Fivetran. It's never been easier to build out a small data team and build out something very powerful with that team. So Bulls aren't the first ones to do it. I would say we're a first follower in this area, but definitely something like, especially as I meet my counterparts across all the U.S. sports leagues, they are very excited to hear what we're doing in this area. And they're always interested to know, well, how much does it cost? How many people are doing this? And I tell them, it is not a heavy financial investment, and you only need a few engineers on staff to make something like this happen. All right, I think this is pretty close to the last slide, but I did want to close with a few points of advice. Many of these probably aren't going to be surprising because I feel like I've repeated them quite a few times over the course of our conversation here. But first and foremost, I can't say it enough, build relationships. Those sort of weak ties you build, it could be just someone that you've had conversations with in your classes, someone that you happen to have as a coworker later on when you're early on in your career, the people maybe if you meet them in grad school, so on and so forth. That building a social capital, you don't know when that has the opportunity to have a profound impact on your life. As I mentioned, a former coworker that my wife had, later happened to work for the Bulls and had that one job LinkedIn posting. If it weren't for the fact of her seeing that posting and then sharing it with me, I wouldn't be in the position I am today. So do reach out, especially, the more, people are maybe not quite the same as you. Having that diversity in your social circle is very important. Again, I would just say Everyone's heard the phrase, it's who you know, but I'll say who you know is what gets you in the door, what opens the door, but it's ultimately what you know that gets you to go through that door. So, luckily, all of you are going to be armed with one of the best degrees that you can have, coming from a place like Georgia Tech. So, what you know is going to be well established, well respected. So, complement that with the who you know as well. Said it earlier in the slides, but really take advantage of Georgia Tech's programs. The degree is only part of the full package of what you get from your time at Georgia Tech. So, I can't say it enough. Get involved in the co-op program, get that work exposure before you graduate. Have already, some meat on your resume before you get into your first full-time job, and then just study abroad. Getting that exposure to different cultures as your own really help. Help with that global exposure just goes a long way towards making you a more well-rounded person. And you never know where that exposure is going to come in handy down the road. And then finally, I just want to say, bet on yourself. I think it's easy to take for granted just how truly brilliant each and every one of you are, being around so many other brilliant people at Georgia Tech. And the fact of the matter is, things are going to feel a lot different once you get out in the real world. And people are going to find out, either from working with you directly or by seeing you indirectly, that you came from a school like Georgia Tech. That's going to carry a lot of weight. So I would say bet on yourself when you're as exceptionally gifted as you are. That's going to open a lot of doors for you. You just need to know to bet on yourself and follow whatever your dreams may be. Is that working at a place like Google or Facebook? Is that becoming a CEO of a large company? Maybe it's starting your own company. The fact of the matter is, you have the ability to do that, coming from such an exceptional background and having the capabilities that you do. Some other things I'd share here, especially early on in your career, over-index on experience and mentors over your first salary or the benefits that come with it. It's an investment in yourself. The salary and the benefits will come as you go on in your career and you're able to excel. The investment of experience and mentors, you're never going to be able to have a chance to get those back. So don't worry about the money. The money will come, and if you're truly passionate about what you do, you'll get paid top dollar for it, I assure you. And then, just in pointing out this, I say, like, risk takers today are tomorrow's leaders. If I took the time to reflect on some of the people I was very close with when I did my undergrad, the people that I knew to be some of the biggest risk takers I know, almost every single one of them, I say, are highly successful today. Guys who, started their own companies and were on Shark Tank, for example. Guys that have started their own companies have already cashed out in their 40s, living on the beach today. Guys that are current CEOs of their company. All these guys are the ones who are not afraid to take risks. So again, you have a strong background. You're exceptionally brilliant people. Bet on yourself. Take those risks because you're more equipped to take those on than almost anyone else in the entire world. With that, I just wanted to close with this last picture. I wanted to share this. So this picture is on the Bulls court before the Bulls Hawks game last year. I just wanted to share this because I was so excited to do it. One of the first things I did when I moved here with my wife to the Chicago area was get involved in the Chicago Georgia Tech alumni group. And one of the activities they did as alumni group was make the decision to come out to the Bulls game. This was before they knew that I was part of the front office. So always been a personal dream of mine and figuring out how I can give back to the Georgia Tech community. And so this was first step in the direction. It's knowing that I was able to work with our ticketing service team to get all the folks that came out for this game to be out on the court for a picture like this. I personally think I got more out of this than any person in that picture because I was so happy to be able to make it happen. You can't tell from the picture, but only about a few feet on each side. Both the teams are doing a shoot around, so we were really forcing every last person in there. In fact, the ticketing folks told me after the fact they would never let a group this large all together on the court at the same time. But luckily, I was able to pull some strings to make it happen, and I was so happy to do it. So thought it'd be a great closing picture to share with everyone. And happy to take any Q&A from here.
Thank you, Shaun. That was awesome. I've got several questions myself, but I'll open up for everybody else to begin.
I have a question. Kind of the data you work with, how has that data changed from the past to what it is now, and where do you see the future of this in like collection of data, what's available to you and how you use it?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great question. I would say both the responsiveness of the data as well as just the sheer breadth of the data has never been larger, and it's only going to get larger now. And it has to because the expectations of how we function as the Bulls and how we interact with our fans, the expectations are only going to be moving forward. I would say actually the big reason that we decided to develop our own data platform in house is seeing the writing on the wall, being able to control what we did with data, what we had access to, and how quickly we could act on it. I'll say with the previous platform we were on that we did not own, we had it managed as a service. We had access to about 10 different data sources. We really didn't have control with how often they were being refreshed. Some of them would be refreshed daily. Some of them would be refreshed, once every 2 hours. But there's a lot that can happen just in that short amount of time. In fact, I would say particularly with a big use case we've been focused on this year is what we do on day of games. You guys might be surprised to hear that on the day of a game, actually half of all of our tickets are changing hands at that point. And one thing we like to do as the Bulls is to send out what we call a know before you go email to all the people that are coming out to a game. And if we were only getting that data update daily, that means, hey, we send out that know before you go email the night before. Half of our fans are not getting that notification. So they don't know if we're doing, say, a Bulls BMO hat giveaway. They don't know if we happen to have a DJ playing in the atrium, or maybe they didn't get some of the safety detail about knowing that you can only bring clear purses, for example. Fast forward to today and what I've been able to implement in the off season, we are getting data feeds from Ticketmaster at near real time, where that gets ingested into our data warehouse. We have transformations that are kicked off from our models right from there. We can see who are the owners of tickets, how they've moved, send that information to our marketing platform, which is called Braze, which then sends an automated campaign out to those folks. So really, from the moment you might get a ticket in your name, either you bought it on Ticketmaster, maybe you got it on the secondary market from a place like StubHub, maybe your friends just transferred it to you. We're able to go end to end with that information in probably half hour, give or take. So you're getting that email and getting that notification, so you have the information you need to know before you go to the game. So taking it back from the top of the question, talking about data is changing. It's just the expectations that come with how you apply the data, knowing how things are changing right then in that moment. It used to be just a few years ago, analytics and the insights that came from it, if you were able to draw insights from data from like the previous day, that was more than acceptable. Now it's all about, at that moment, what is happening at this moment, and how do we do intraday decision making, intra-hour, even intra-minute decision making. So it's the responsiveness and it's the breadth of it. If it's a system we interact with, the expectation was that we should be able to get actionable data from that source. For us, we have almost 40 data sources coming in across about every social media platform you can think of. Our CRM systems, that's customer relationship management. So that's how we track a lot of the ticket sales that we do with our fans, like season tickets, group tickets, what have you. And then honestly, our lifeblood, the Ticketmaster data among those. But it also, the expectation of data and where you go with it today is not only like all the great data you have in the data warehouse, but how you unlock it. So it's about, as much as we have all this great source of truth that we combine in the data warehouse with all the disparate information, how do I take that and feed it back into the systems that told us about that? So if in our CRM system, if we have stuff where we know about, maybe a lead, maybe it's an elementary school or someone who's reaching out to us about Filipino Heritage Night for a Bulls game. We can start to build a full 360 profile about that person. Maybe they've interacted with the Bulls on Twitter or TikTok. Maybe they've come out to a game before, but we can combine all that information, feed it back into our other systems. So that ticket rep that's working with that person representing Filipino Heritage Night, she can know everything about that person to facilitate the most personal experience possible.
That is amazing. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Hi, Shaun. Thanks so much for sharing your career journey with us. I
Mhm.
just wanted to ask a question since I feel like your career journey has been pretty linear. Like you knew you enjoyed like data management from your undergrad, and you kind of took that into like your first couple of jobs, and then like you progressed more towards like leadership, right, with the MBA and stuff. And so I guess my question is kind of where do you see yourself next and like next steps in your career journey?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. Honestly, where I am right now, I'm very comfortable. I love what we're building right now. I can see how we're evolving this and what we're doing with the data platform and how I'm empowering the Bulls front office is definitely something that's going to keep me busy for the next couple of years. But no, I'm a person that I'm always motivated by doing more. Seeing the writing on the wall that I personally see as I interact with other folks across other sports teams is that there is a lot of opportunity for technical leadership, and certainly data has never been more important and how that enables all these teams. And again, more and more teams are making this pivot towards taking full data ownership in house. So I hope to know if I get the opportunity to do this again 3 5 years from now. Who knows? Hopefully it's with the Bulls, and I could say I'm functioning as a chief data officer as part of this front office. Maybe it's part of another team, but I see a lot of opportunity for further leadership in this area and being a data steward for some of the biggest sports teams in America.
Awesome, thanks. It's cool to see that you're mixing your tech degree with something you're so passionate about.
Yeah, thank you very much. Honestly, never knew if it was going to happen. I had an opportunity with another team back in, I think it was about 2019. A little closer to Atlanta, I'll just say. I won't throw out names quite exactly, but ultimately had to decide it wasn't the right fit for me. So, I never thought I was going to have another shot at this, but so when the Bulls opportunity came around, I knew I couldn't say no.
Sean, I've got a question. Obviously, y'all have a really advanced data team, and you're talking about how y'all are developing your own or have developed your own in-house platform. Are the
Yeah.
other are the other teams this sophisticated, or is this are the Bulls kind of on the cutting edge of this of using data this sophisticatedly?
No, that's a great question there. I hear that a lot, and it's again, most people are surprised that there aren't more teams advancing in this area. I won't say the Bulls are the first ones to do this. Actually, a lot of the smaller market teams have made great strides in this area. I would personally have to give flowers to the Orlando Magic. I know they're pretty advanced in this area. Just had a recent conversation with my counterpart at the Indiana Pacers. They've made a lot of growth in this area, but I would certainly say they are the exceptions to the rule. Yeah, I don't think the Bulls are leading the charge in this area, but we're certainly first followers in this area where most sports teams aren't quite as invested in this area yet. But if there's one thing I'd say is consistent is that a lot of them have an appetite to grow in this area. A lot of them, again, have been on a productized sort of data platform where they don't have to manage it in house, but they felt the constraints for it. They know if they had access to the right data sources, or if that data was fresh enough, and they had more control on how that data was transformed and how they married those disparate data sources, how it would supercharge a lot of the activities they do. They just don't have the expertise in house necessary to bite that off. So I think more and more over the coming years that's going to change quite a bit. But we're certainly in the minority in that respect.
Wow, that's cool. I guess a follow-up question off that is, what's sort of the relationship between people on the business side between teams? Is it competitive, or is it more like you guys aren't doing the money ball stuff so you can kind of network like you were talking about earlier? What's sort of
Yeah,
the vibe?
yeah, it's absolutely yeah, the opposite of competition. Everybody is very big on supporting each other. I think it's trying to remember the phrase. I think it's the tide can raises all ships, and they really see it that way. As much as our teams compete on the court, everybody supports each other from a business perspective, just because it's in everyone's best interest. It's funny, I go to a lot of technical conferences over the course of the year. I went to, I believe, Snowflake Summit, for example, earlier this year. And one of the first things that happens inevitably is people from various sports teams try to find who else is attending that conference and reach out and get a chance to network with those folks. So we're always interested to say, hey, what are you working on? What tools are you currently standing up? What does your platform look like today? What does your team structure look like? And we're always sharing best practices. I've enjoyed that so much. I've never been part of an industry where folks have been so open and so collaborative than working with the various other business analytics teams across our major sports leagues in the U.S.
That's awesome.
I can ask a really quick one. If
Yeah.
someone had to reach out, contact you, how can we do that? Do you prefer email, LinkedIn, anything like that?
Yeah, by all means, you could try me on LinkedIn. One thing I'll say is I do note that you're reaching out, following up from the SAA presentation. One thing I had to get used to once I joined the Bulls is that people notice on LinkedIn and they are reaching out a lot. I do get a lot of messages and a lot of invitations to connect on LinkedIn, but I certainly want to make an exception for anyone coming from this Georgia Tech group. So, yeah, by all means, reach out, and I'd love to address any questions you might have. Love to be a resource.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I had another question, kind of just with the final picture you had up with the Georgia Tech Club in Chicago. Like
Yeah.
you mentioned that you and your wife like relocated to Chicago, and I guess you guys got connected with the G2 community there. So I guess how was that process? Like I'm also from Georgia, and like I've lived here most of my life, and so I guess in general, how was the process like moving to a whole different part of the country and getting connected with the alumni there?
Yeah, I'll try to address that in two pieces. One, just generally the move. Personally, for me, was difficult. I've ever since I finished my undergrad at Georgia Tech, and certainly well before then, I've always been living in Atlanta. So this is the first major move I've made ever since I was a child. So that took a lot of get used to. I had to do a lot of adult stuff as far as figuring out how to sell my house in Atlanta, getting a new place here. For example, my first year in Chicago, I just tried to find an apartment that was walking distance to the United Center, which I learned is a really bad idea, learning about what January is like in Chicago. So, learned some important life lessons there. Like, I didn't really own a winter jacket, thought I owned a winter jacket. Didn't realize I needed snow boots. You definitely need snow boots here. So, had a lot to figure out there. So, great for the move, though. I think it's great exposure. And again, it's all about taking risks. There's so many things I've experienced here in the 1 year I've been in Chicago that I wouldn't have had previously. So I'm really happy we did it. As far as getting connected with the Georgia Tech Chicago chapter, the alumni group here, it was much as just looking them up on social media, finding connections there, and that's where I found out JD, who's the head of the Georgia Tech alumni group Chicago chapter here. Just reached out with him, connected, and they have so many events that go on over the course of the year. I think I just got an email from them earlier this week where they're doing what they call a tech tumble, which is just I think a bar crawl across Chicago with everybody in the group. We now have established a Georgia Tech bar here in Chicago, so get to meet with folks to go cheer on the Jackets during football season, which is nice. And then we have events like this where everybody goes out to eat a Bulls game at least once a year. So it's a great group. I've had a lot of friends and friendships I've been able to establish because of this. So if your post Georgia Tech time does take you to another major city, I'm sure you'll find a lot of strong Georgia Tech alumni folks out there, and recommend reaching out.
Awesome. Thanks for your answer.
Shaun, obviously, when you were applying for this role with the Bulls, you already had a really awesome resume. You obviously had a lot of experience with revenue analytics, and that project with High, I'm sure was just one of many. But I'm sure the other people applying were also really high end, really intense people. What do you think made you stand out in the 600? What did it come down to?
I honestly, there's not really a black and white answer to that. I think it was the collection of things, and that's why I wanted to make sure I captured so many details from like my background, as well as like the education. I think honestly, every little step, all those combined, is what helped me stand out. Certainly, having the expertise in computer science that Georgia Tech afforded me, the leadership exposure, the full understanding of the business that came from. Doing my MBA, even the little things is like being comfortable doing a PowerPoint deck, which most people that are, have the analytics expertise would not be comfortable doing. The conversations I was able to have with various folks in the front office during the interview process, it was honestly the longest and most challenging interview process I ever had. I had to have, I believe, 6 references when they were moving towards a final offer. Had 2 or 3 take-home exercises, and they weren't just technical things. It was about how do I present myself, present a project plan, and let them know how I would proceed with building out a new data platform for the Bulls. So I would have to point, if I didn't get the experience that I got at every stop I had in my career, or get that exposure I had doing my Georgia Tech MBA and my computer science degree, I don't think I would have been the right person for this job. But all those things added up and helped push me over the line to be that one person.
That's cool. That hiring process is crazy. I didn't know it could get that complex. That's cool.
No, yeah, no, it was really involved. I know even like they even are very particular about your personality profile. So one thing that they have you test for at the end of the interview process is just to understand your leadership style and your behaviors as a person. And they have a particular belief of what the person coming in this role should exhibit from a personality perspective, and so they index very highly on that as well. So it's really the full package of making sure that you're a perfect fit for the Bulls.
Wow. Anybody else got any final questions for Shaun?
Hello, Shaun. Thank you very much for your presentation. I've enjoyed it very much. I was especially interested to hear about how you did your MBA to add on to your CS degree. I'm currently a CS student, and I've become very interested in the idea of like a minor in business. And
Yep.
I was curious about any other insights you would have to offer with considering that, and how you feel like it's helped you in what you're trying to do, and in like making you more well-rounded. And yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, I can't speak highly enough of it. I think it's incredibly complementary to a computer science degree. It shows that you're able to come out of your comfort zone. I think it's easy to pigeonhole people that come from a highly technical background and what they can and cannot do. But that business degree shows how versatile you truly are. And then I would say what I mentioned before, being able to have that exposure to the full spectrum of the business. A computer science degree is really great and filling out your technical expertise. But then again, you're not afforded normally those opportunities to understand things like marketing, finance, operations, strategy. And honestly, one thing I learned from my MBA is that the underlying principles that you learn as a computer science major do have a lot of applications to those other roles. How to be properly efficient in operations management. How does the strategy you may employ in developing software apply to the real world in other areas? So that, coupled with just the ability to take on those leadership classes, understand how to manage a team, how to manage a group of incredibly brilliant people, all I think resonated really well with me, and I would highly recommend it to anyone who is looking to grow in technical leadership.
Thank you very much.
All right, guys, I want to be respectful of Shaun's time, but if anyone's got one more question, I think we've got time for that. Everybody good? All right. Well, Shaun, this has been awesome. Thank you so much for joining us. I got a lot out of this, and I'm sure everyone else did as well.
No, I appreciate having the opportunity to meet with y'all. And again, if you guys have any questions after the fact or want to connect, you can find me on LinkedIn.
So, thank you so much. Have a good night.
Yeah. All right, y'all. Go Bulls.
Yes, sir.
Thanks.
Thank you.